Her founding stones were watered with the blood of men.
The episode opens on a man who doesn't exist. Sellswords ride into Harrenhal looking for Ormund. There's a bounty on his head, and by now plenty of hunters have come through. Alys Rivers meets them. And instead of just saying, he isn't here, which is what she'll get around to eventually, she starts telling them about the castle, about the men who built it, who died here, in chains. And then she names the man they died for, in service to Harren the Cruel. Okay, stop right there, because Harren the Cruel doesn't exist. I mean, the man existed. Harrenhal, king of the Iron Islands, who conquered the Riverlands and decided to build himself the biggest castle anybody had ever seen. He spent 40 years on it. 40. Think about that for a second. He dragged in labor from the whole region, stripped his own lands bare, cut down the forests, all of it for 5 towers, each one taller than the last. He finished it. He moved in. And that same night, Aegon the Conqueror turned up on a dragon and burned it down around him. They say the stone ran like wax. Here's the thing though, in the books this man has exactly one name, and it never changes. Harren the Black. Not Cruel, Black. And the Cruel is already taken in this world. That was Maegor, the second Targaryen king, who killed on such a scale and in such a way that the name welded itself to him permanently, and became more or less a synonym for tyrant. So here's Alys, a woman of the Riverlands, which is the exact land Harren bled dry, a descendant of the people who hauled those stones and died in irons. And she doesn't call the builder what the chronicles call him. You see what just happened? The winners wrote down, Black. The people who died under him remember Cruel. One word. Nobody lingers on it. It goes by in the first 5 minutes like small talk. And honestly, the whole episode is sitting inside it. Because that's all this hour does. It shows you the same thing called different names, depending on whose mouth it comes out of. And while we're still in Harrenhal, listen to Alys finish, because she says something else that's easy to lose under all the atmosphere. She's listing who actually lives in the castle. There's an old man who churns the butter, and he's blind in both eyes. There's a boy who feeds the horses. And then, in exactly the same flat list-making tone, like it's just the third item, she adds, and then there are the ghosts. And then this castle breathes. Not, it's haunted. Not, bad things happened here. Breathes. Alive. And then, she swallows the greedy and the heedless. She. The castle is female, and it isn't just alive, it eats. And it eats selectively. Not everyone. Specifically the greedy, which is to say the men standing in front of her who came here for money. She is describing to these people exactly how they're going to die, and they're standing there listening, and not one of them clocks it. Notice, she never threatens them, not once. She's just telling them about the house. Now watch Rhaenyra's council. There's a woman at that table you probably know as Mysaria, former dancer out of Lys, which is a city across the water that mostly exports wine and slaves to Westeros. These days, she runs the spies, which means she's the person who knows everything and says almost nothing. Look at her collar. There's embroidery on it. A pattern runs the whole length of the lapel, and it coils, it winds, it's picked out in beadwork a shade darker than the fabric itself. While she's moving, you can't see it at all. It surfaces in exactly one moment, when she's standing still by the window, not talking. And then, 20 minutes later in this same episode, somebody says her old nickname out loud, the White Worm. Now let me be straight with you, so nobody yells at me in the comments. I'm not telling you the costume department stitched worms onto her. That same pattern reads perfectly well as a vine, or as waves. Nobody from that department has ever explained it publicly, and I'm not going to dress up a guess as a fact, but a woman they call the Worm is wearing something that coils. And she's wearing it quietly. And while we're on her, watch the scene where she talks to Alicent. These two women have been kept out of the same frame for a long time, and there's a reason for that. One of them used to be queen, the other came out of a brothel. By every rule this world runs on, they have nothing to say to each other. Mysaria explains her position roughly like this. It's her privilege now to listen to the whispers of the Red Keep, who comes to see you, what it is you want, and what gifts they bring. Listen to what she's actually listing there. Guests, wants, presents. Not a word about armies or borders or fleets, which is what these councils normally chew on for an hour. Because that isn't her trade. Her trade is small things that add up to what a person is hiding. And the whole episode, if you step back, is built the same way. Not out of battles. Out of gifts and slips and the embroidery on somebody's collar. Since we're cataloging small things, here's another one the show hands you without comment. Aemond and Alys. Their scene is easy to skate past because almost nothing happens in it. He's lying down, she's next to him, the room is dark, there are candles, nobody's really talking. But look at the posture. He isn't holding her, she's holding him. Arms right around him, like a child. This is the man all of Westeros is hunting as a monster, with a bounty on his head, whose crimes get discussed at war councils in 2 capitals at once. And here he is, lying down, being held, and not resisting it. The show doesn't say one word about this, it just sets the camera down and lets you look. Speaking of nicknames, those sellswords in Harrenhal aren't just looking for Aemond. They're looking for Aemond the Kinslayer. That's his name out of the book. He earned it for Lucerys, his nephew, the boy he burned out of the sky along with his dragon. And the show is being exact here. That word comes straight off the page. But notice, when they're using it, kinslaying in this world isn't just a crime. It's closer to a religious category, the worst thing a person can do, the thing the gods are supposed to never forgive. And right now, by episode 5, half of Westeros is convinced Aemond also killed his own brother, the king. The name stuck to him for a different one. He's walking around wearing a label that everyone reads their own way, and every episode it fits a little better. Now we go to Oldtown, Ormund Hightower and young Daeron. Quick stop here, because Daeron turned up late in the show and people still mix him up. Daeron is the 4th child of Viserys and Alicent, younger brother to Aegon, Helena, and Aemond. They shipped him off to Oldtown as a boy to be raised by his mother's relatives, and he's been sitting there the entire time everyone in the capital was busy killing each other. So he's the only one of those children who didn't marinate in it from the start. He showed up after it had already burned. And Oldtown is the 2nd largest city in Westeros, and probably the oldest. The Citadel is there, where they train maesters. The main seat of the faith is there. And the High Tower is there, an enormous lighthouse of a tower that ships steer by, with a fire burning at the top around the clock. The house that owns that tower is named after it. Ormund runs that house. He's Alicent's cousin, so he's family to Daeron, and he's rich family. Oldtown hasn't seen the war yet. His money is intact, his men are intact, and his reputation is intact, which in episode 5 is a rare combination. Hold all of that in your head when he takes out the coin. But first, look at his belt, not his face. There's a pierced metal sphere hanging off a chain there. It's called a pomander. You'd fill it with incense, amber, cloves, and breathe through it. Completely real object, by the way. In medieval Europe, everybody who could afford one carried one, because cities smelled roughly like an open sewer, and people genuinely believed the bad smell was the disease. So the man wasn't given a line that says, "I'm fastidious." He was given an object. This is the same Ormund who washes his hands in this episode after handling a carrier pigeon. He doesn't talk about himself. He wears himself on his belt. And that's a fairly rare way to build a character, so let me sit on it for a second. Normally, a new person gets introduced with dialogue. Somebody walks in, says something sharp, and we immediately file them. Right, that one's clever, that one's cruel, that one's the comic relief. Fast, cheap, works fine. They didn't do that here. They gave Ormund props instead. A spice ball on his belt, washed hands, and a very level tone of voice for saying things that start wars. Not one line like, "I'm a careful man." Not one scene where somebody explains him. And by the end of his sequence, you know exactly what he is. And he never told you. That, honestly, is the thing I'm actually hunting for in videos like this. Not Easter eggs for the sake of Easter eggs. Moments where the writers decided not to explain. Then he shows Daeron a coin and asks, "Do you think it a good likeness?" They give you the coin in close-up, and you can see all of it. Gold. Lettering around the rim. The edge is irregular, not machined, so it was struck by hand, hammer onto a die. And in the middle there's a face, not in profile the way faces usually sit on coins, but straight at you, head on, long hair falling either side. Daeron's face. And that is not a cute little prop. That's a claim. because minting coins with your own face on them is the oldest way there is to announce that you're the king. Roman emperors did it. Every usurper after them did it. The playbook never changed. Take power. We strike the money. Because until your face is in people's pockets, you're nobody. And the moment it's in there, you're somehow legitimate, and a few hundred strangers a day hand you back and forth without thinking about it. Ormund actually says this out loud. He just says it prettily. He calls it the sign their allies have been waiting for. The son of Viserys. He's not an advisor to a prince. He's manufacturing a king. And he started with money, not soldiers. Here's a small thing I liked. Later in the episode, somewhere else entirely, and about something completely different, somebody comes out with a line about how there have always been two sides to a coin. Ordinary throwaway phrase. It isn't about money at all, but by then the episode has already shown you an actual coin. With two sides, one side you stamp a boy's face on and call it a signal to your allies, and with the other side you're paying men to go and kill. Rhymes like that, by the way, are the best sign a script was written rather than assembled. A word turns up twice, in different scenes, and the second one only lands because of the first. In that same scene, right behind Daeron, there's a high tower banner on the wall. Step tower, beacon fire burning at the top. 6 seconds later, Ormund says the words, "The beacon shining from the high tower." Shown first, said second. That's the right order, because you get to see it before anybody explains it to you. Then, Ormund tells the boy about Merya Martell, and this is my favorite scene in the episode. Merya was the ruler of Dorne, the one the conquest broke itself on. Let me remind you how that went. Aegon the Conqueror took the entire continent in about 2 years. 3 dragons, that's it. Kingdoms folded one after another. Some surrendered on sight, some burned in the field with their armies, and the only real question was, how fast? One kingdom didn't fold. Dorne. 1 out of 7. They called Merya the Yellow Toad. By then she was very old, very heavy, and completely blind. And she didn't fight in the field. She did something else. She poisoned her own wells, moved her people out, left the enemy an empty, scorched country with nothing to camp on and nothing to drink. Ormund serves this to Daeron as a tactics lesson. Learn from this boy, this is how you win a war when you don't have the strength for a battle. But you watch this episode. That exact thing is being done to him right now. Burned crossings, ruined roads, an enemy who's nowhere and won't come out and fight. He's explaining the move that's currently being used to beat him, and he doesn't notice. And here's the honest part about that lesson. Ormund doesn't talk about Merya like she's an enemy. He admires her. To him, it's a nice story about brains beating muscle, and he tells it to the boy in roughly the tone adults use for a clever folktale hero. Except Merya didn't win by being clever. She won by being willing to wreck her own country. Poisoned wells aren't an elegant maneuver, they're your own people with nothing to drink. Scorched earth is your own harvest. Dorne held because it agreed to pay a price the invaders never imagined anyone would agree to pay. Ormund leaves that part out. He tells the victory and skips the bill. And the boy sits there learning that this is how it's done properly. Keep that in mind when Daeron starts making decisions of his own. Oh, and while he's at it, a line slides past that'll make certain people's ears twitch. Ormund says Merya swore that Dorne would ever be unbowed, unbent. That's the Martell house words. Unbowed, unbent, unbroken. The same ones you'll hear a century and a half later in Game of Thrones. Now the thing one entire scene seems to have been written for. A garden, Helaena crouched down next to her daughter. Alicent's there too, all 3 of them looking at a plant. Helaena explains it to the child. Caterpillars eat the leaves of the nightshade. Nightshade is poison. For you or me, that's death, and to them, it's nothing. And more than that, the poison doesn't go anywhere. It stays inside. The butterfly that hatches out of that caterpillar will be poisonous too. And she adds 1 word. A puzzle. Right, let's step out of the show for a minute because this doesn't land otherwise. A couple of years ago, George Martin, the man who wrote the books, put up a post on his blog and deleted it almost immediately. The post was called, "Beware the Butterflies." In it, he explained why he was angry at the adaptation. The main complaint, they cut a character out of the story completely. A small boy, Prince Maelor, the youngest son of Aegon and Helena. He was inconvenient for the production. You need a 2-year-old on set, and toddlers make shooting slow and expensive. Martin argued against it, not because he felt sorry for the child, but because in his version of the story, things ripple outward from that boy. He called it the butterfly effect, small change now, enormous consequences later. And he wrote, word for word, that there were larger and more toxic butterflies to come. He took the post down, but the internet was faster. The quote got picked up everywhere, Variety and The Ringer ran it, and it's been living its own life ever since. Now go back to that garden. Helena is sitting there, the mother of the boy they cut, explaining to her daughter how poison turns into a poisonous butterfly, and calling it a puzzle. Could be a coincidence. I'll genuinely allow that. The writers might have put that scene together with nothing in mind at all. Nightshade and caterpillars are a perfectly normal thing for a mother to talk to a child about. But let me count what has to line up for it to be an accident. The scene goes to Helena specifically, the mother of the cut child, and not to any other character. The subject is specifically a poison that doesn't kill the thing eating it, but builds up inside it. The end product of that process is specifically a butterfly. And the whole thing closes on the word puzzle, which is a direct invitation to go and think about it. 4 things in a row, in one short scene that has no effect on the plot whatsoever. You could cut it and the episode wouldn't notice. I'm not going to tell you I proved anything. You can't prove this one, not unless a writer comes out and says so, and they probably never will. But if it is an answer to Martin, it's the politest piece of backtalk I've ever seen. He doesn't even argue. He just takes the man's own metaphor and plays it out loud, through somebody else's mouth, in a garden, in front of a child. And now, the ending. Here's something worth noticing. For the last 20 seconds of this episode, nobody says anything. Not a line, not a whisper, nothing. For a solid hour, people have been sitting and talking. Councils, chambers, negotiations, history lessons, another council. This episode is almost entirely conversation. And it ends in silence. In that silence, Daemon walks into a room. There's writing on the wall, in blood. A feast for traitors. Underneath it, a long table. Along one side of it, facing us, the dead are seated. Candles burning between them, food laid out on the table, raw meat. A sword driven into the floor dead center. And the dead men, if you look closely, are wearing yellow cloaks. That's the city watch. Gold cloaks, if you're not up on it, are the capital's city guard. Not an army, and not knights, just ordinary patrolmen. They break up fights, drag off thieves, stand on the gates. Their cloaks are yellow, hence the name. And they don't serve the king personally, they serve whoever's currently sitting in the castle, which puts them in a deeply awkward spot every time power changes hands. Now rewind to minute 12. At the council, somebody says, and I quote the substance of it, 2 of our gold cloaks were found dead in the street this morning. Where? Flea Bottom. At the council, that gets about 2 lines. 2 dead watchmen isn't news in a war that counts the dead in thousands. Somebody makes a remark about how Flea Bottom never answered to anyone anyway, and the conversation moves on to more important business. They started with 2. They finished with a whole table. Same episode. And notice that in a full hour, nobody ever says out loud who's doing this. The show never shows a killing and never names anyone. It just puts 2 lines in the minutes at the start and brings you the bill at the end. About the composition, I want to be careful, because this is exactly where people overreach. A long table, everyone seated along one side facing the viewer, candles, and the central figure sitting directly under the word traitors. That looks an awful lot like the Last Supper, but I counted them. There are 10 bodies, Leonardo has 13. 3 short. So either it's a reference and they just didn't pad it out to hit the number, or I want to see 1 badly enough that I'm seeing 1. I've shown you what's in the frame, you can make the call. Although I'll give you one thing in favor of it being deliberate. It isn't only about the count. It's that whoever dressed that room wasn't going for plausibility at all. Corpses don't sit up on their own. You have to place them, prop them, hold them there, set candles between them, lay food out in front of them, and then drive a sword into the floor on the exact center line. In a house, you need to be gone from before anyone arrives. That's not a crime scene. That's a set. Somebody spent an hour on it. One more thing, the phrasing itself. A feast for traitors. A feast for somebody. Martin has a novel built on exactly that construction. A feast for crows. Might be nothing. It's an ordinary enough turn of phrase in English. But the person writing on that wall in blood reached for a book title rather than something like Death to Traitors. And then, over all of it, as the last line of the episode, comes a prayer. The stranger offers us rest. The stranger is one of the 7 faces of their god, the one that handles death. You don't pray to him for a harvest, and you don't ask him for luck. You go to him when it's already over. Now look at what's been done here. That prayer isn't being said in this room. It's being said somewhere else entirely, over 2 women who are shut in and can't get out. And what they're showing you while it's spoken is a table full of corpses. Words from one scene, picture from another. For an hour, this episode has been telling you that the same thing gets called different things depending on who's talking. And at the end, it does exactly that itself. Hands you the words from over there and the image from over here, and stitches them together until they mean a third thing. Harren the Black, or Harren the Cruel. A feast or a slaughter. Rest or death. Depends who's telling it. And here's what I think the episode is actually doing, if you stand back from it. War episodes are usually simple. Show the battle, show the losses, explain who's stronger now. There's barely any war in this one. There's conversation, a history lesson, a meal, embroidery, a coin, a caterpillar on a leaf. And you still come out the other end with a very clear sense that things got worse, even though on paper almost nothing happened. Because this episode isn't fighting with armies, it's fighting with words. One person renames a dead king, and that's enough to tell you whose land this is and who around here hasn't forgiven anything. Another stamps a boy's face on money, and after that the boy isn't a boy anymore. A third digs up an old insult and turns it into a description of real power. Nobody draws a sword, and the board changes anyway. And that table at the end is the same move taken to its limit. Hardly anyone would call those men traitors. They were named traitors, in blood, on a wall, then seated and served up as dinner. A murder was turned into a statement. So, if you got this far and you're wondering which detail here is the big one, I'd say it's the very first one. The word in the first 5 minutes that's on screen for a second, and that nobody stops for. Harren the Cruel. Everything after that is just the episode explaining how it works. And you know what I like most about it? Nobody winks. Alys doesn't pause after cruel. The camera doesn't push in on Nasaria's collar. The coin isn't held up 1 extra second, so you definitely get a look at the face. All of it sits in frame for exactly as long as it would sit there if there were nothing underneath. Catch it, and it's yours. Miss it, and the episode doesn't mind and isn't any worse for it. Which is pretty much the whole reason episodes like this are worth a second watch.